Hi guys, so I wanted to kind of introduce myself. My name is Liz, a lot of you know me. I was born into the Jehovah's Witness organization in 1976. My parents were indoctrinated by my uncle. They came into the church, I believe in 1973, but I could be wrong. It may have been 72. And they were baptized 2 weeks after they were married. My mother was raised in a Protestant family. And my dad was raised in a Catholic family. So the religion that they did is they did a ton of research and finally decided that the Jehovah's Witnesses had it all right. My mom had some beliefs that they couldn't meet in the church that she was in, and my dad had felt the same way. There were some things that he couldn't believe that the church had taught. So they did a bunch of research and finally came up with a Jehovah's Witness organization that provided them all the answers to what they wanted. And so they studied with my uncle. My uncle, he was an elder, and he had a wife. Her name was Michelle. My uncle's name is Cliff. This uncle, I found out later, had a history of sexual assault on my mother. Now, I totally understand that doesn't necessarily carry through. But from what I understand, history has repeated itself in a number of ways. So they had my older brother, Joshua, in 1973. He was the firstborn. They named him Joshua because he opened my mother's womb. Anyway, and so they named him Joshua. And then I came along in 1976. And then I have a little sister who was born in 1979. Her name is Rachel. And then I have a little brother who was born in 1983, and his name is Nathan. So I'm the second oldest. My mom said that I was her firstborn in a lot of ways because I was really kind of not the typical Jehovah's Witness little kiddo. Questioned everything. Had a very gregarious, outgoing personality, not a doormat, just was really super outgoing. And I remember consistently my parents saying that I was either way too much or not enough. And I really firmly believe that's kind of where I started questioning. Because if a God was a God of flexibility, he could use anybody. I mean, look, he used Peter, right? So why couldn't he use a female with Peter's personality? He created me. Did he make a mistake? So that's kind of where a lot of little chips started coming in. My first memory is and I'm sorry, this is going to be graphic for some. So if you have this going and just plain normal, you might want to hide your kids. It's not something that I would want my kids to hear. So my very first memory, and the only memory for a lot of time, is my brother sexually assaulting me. He was dry humping me beside an aluminum garbage can at the foot of my parents' bed during a nap time. And I had told the elders and my parents right afterwards about that. And sorry, it's a little harder than what I thought. And the elder's response was to split my lip open so that she can't talk. So my parents were told by the elders who I thought at that point were safe, to have my lips split open. I can't imagine doing it to my kids. So, I'm glad my parents didn't do it to me. But in ways, I almost wish they would have, because maybe I would have been safer in the long run. Woo. So, that's my first memory. Pretty on and off, but more consistently, lots and lots of memories of sexual assault by my older brother. And my dad was really big on physical assault. And so from what I figure and piece together, I was sexually assaulted from the ages of 3 to 12, and then physically assaulted until I left at 25. My dad, was a huge spanker. He had what was called an ant killer belt. So if we were acting up in the meetings, he would take us outside the Kingdom Hall and spank us with this ant killer belt. This ant killer belt was made of all leather and had metal rivets, and he would double it up. Sometimes he would snap it before, so doubling up and kind of just yanking both sides of it and pulling it down and snapping it before he would spank us. It was an intimidation tactic. And spankings, they weren't uncommon to be 200 or maybe even 300 a night. It wasn't very uncommon at all. He would very frequently either punch beside my head. There are patches that I have known in the walls where they're at, where he punched beside my head, because I would make him so angry, according to him. Okay. And then he would also kick beside us, so there's a lot of holes, either by the head or kind of by our shins area. My brother would go on to sexually assault us, me in particular, until I was 12. Most of the time, it was in his room, right before the meeting. We had meetings on Tuesdays and Thursday, and night seemed to be his favorite time. He would have us come into his room after we had either dressed in dresses or skirts, and he would have us stand with our back against the wall and access our genitalia with his hand, and then stimulate himself as well with his other hand. And he would have our back to the door so he could watch and listen for any incoming adults and then change it up. So when I stopped the abuse, I was 12 years old. Remember the night pretty darn clearly. My parents had a piano in the living room and the TV along the back wall. This is really a hard part for me. After this, I'll shut it off and I'll continue more tomorrow. I told my parents that he had been sexually assaulting me, and for a very long time. And my dad said that it was such a violation that I lied, and that Joshua would never lie about that. He took the telephone cord that was sitting right beside him, and he said that he was going to teach me not to lie ever again. I got spanked with that telephone cord on the inside of my thigh until I bled. I remember the feeling of blood running down my legs. It's not something that I want my kids to experience. But the blood was running down my thighs. After my parents were done, my dad in particular, I cleaned up my legs, and he said, now you need to go get dressed for the meeting. The last thing I wanted to do was go to meeting, but I wasn't going to backtalk him, especially after us thinking like that. Whew. So he told me to put on my nylons and to make sure that I put deodorant on my legs so that the nylons would not stick to the healing wounds, and go to the Kingdom Hall. So I did. I bucked up, put on a smile, and went to the Kingdom Hall. And I was in utter pain. Yeah, so that was kind of my first experience with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'll tell you a little bit more tomorrow. I have committed to trying to tell my story about 10 minutes at a time. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll try to answer them. If you want to know names, I can give you names. I have no problem. But this is about self-care for me and about letting people know that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't what they seem at all. And if my story can save one person, I want them to be saved. So until tomorrow, keep your kiddos safe. Love on them. Give them an extra hug from Crazy Aunt Lizzie. And we'll pick it up tomorrow. All right. We'll talk to you later.